But here's the reminder that it's about trusting that your many callings are not distractions. They're actually your directions. Welcome to the Endlessly Elated Podcast. I'm your host, Kathleen Pagan, founder of Endlessly Elated, cook, designer, storyteller, and soon-to-be author. But at heart, I'm a woman endlessly curious about what it means to live with intention. Week after week, we'll slow down, reflect, ask life's big questions, and uncover the lessons that help us live more thoughtfully. Welcome to today's episode. When I sat down to prepare for this episode, I'll be honest, I started to second guess it. For reasons I can't even quite explain, I just started to question if it even mattered, if it had been covered a bunch of times. I just got in my own head about it. And then, as life would have it, I received a DM and it read, "Thank you for modeling the way and not being niched per se." It stopped me. It was a little nudge from the universe, perfectly serendipitous, reminding me why we should always trust our intuition. So, let me honor my gut. I've spent the better part of my life trying to make sense of how all my pieces fit, how one curiosity of mine leads to another, how the many parts of me belong to the same whole, and how each of those pieces that once felt like they were competing to define who I was or what I should be is actually what makes me, me. We're so conditioned early on that being certain of who we are somehow equals legitimacy, that if we hold more than one interest, we must be confused or lost. From the time we can remember, we're told to pick a lane, build a niche, and stick to it. Marketing 101, right? I mean, think about it. One of our very first memories at school is being asked, what do we want to be when we grow up? As if there's only one right answer and you're supposed to know as a kindergartner. To me, that's no coincidence. That's conditioning. I mean, superhero is fine when you're 5, but eventually you learn that only certain dreams are acceptable, that somehow fitting in matters more than pursuing our truest expressions of ourselves. But let's be honest, what the world really wants isn't you. It's classification. It wants to know where to place you on the shelf. For me, it's, are you a designer, a chef? Wait, a lifestyle expert? No, an entrepreneur. For you, the categories might be different, but in essence, it's all the same. The world understands single stories, but it struggles with living mosaics. And because of that, we are pegged as being, quote unquote, all over the place. And if you let it, it starts to feel like a flaw. At least it did for me for many years. It's an important reminder that there's a difference between being lost and being layered. Because we've been so conditioned to see exploration as indecision, when in reality, it's devotion to one more thing. And when we start trimming away every part of ourselves that doesn't fit the societal picture, we don't just lose our depth, we lose our purpose, our whole point. We unconsciously begin to quiet the parts of us that don't fit the narrative, even when those are the very parts of us that make us one of a kind. And by doing this, we fall into the trap. We traded the substance of who we are for the illusion of belonging. And it's so easy to fall because the modern world still loves labels. New industries have emerged, expanding what's possible, but still quietly building new, perfectly acceptable boxes to fit into. It's different names for the same old patterns. So then let's call it what it is. The world still yearns for categories, simplified bios, and brand pillars to make sense of who we are, as if being multifaceted makes us hard to believe. This way, when our lives don't fit neatly inside a single sentence, or even worse, a single word, we are dismissed into the lacks direction category. But here's the reminder. that it's about trusting that your many callings are not distractions. They're actually your directions. And maybe being a jack of all trades was never the problem. Maybe it was the whole damn point. Because in case you didn't know, the full quote says, "A jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one." When I say I've wrestled with this myself, I mean it. Because just like anyone else, there's so many layers to my own conformity. Over the years, I've been asked by others, how do I find my purpose? And while it's been asked in different forms and different words, and I know purpose is so much more than what we do, my answer remains consistent. Go back to who you were as a child, before the world told you what made sense, before your parents or society's fears became your North Star, before you learned to shrink yourself into something safe, before all that noise, whatever you were drawn to then, that right there, what just came to mind, is undoubtedly where your purpose lives. It's usually hiding in plain sight in the things that lit you up well before you ever worried about what made sense. And growing up, that was me. Food, entertaining, design, those were my worlds. Of course, I didn't have the language for it then, but every part of me knew it. It was innate. I'd spend afternoons cooking with my mom, skipping playtime to supposedly test out a recipe that was way beyond my skill level. I actually have this very fond memory, although perhaps a bit traumatizing too, where I almost had to chop off all my hair because it got caught in a mixer. My mom wasn't thrilled for obvious reasons, but I remember quickly pulling it together out of the fear she'd never let me cook with her again. And I also loved watching my big family gather around a table. My dad was one of 13. And just seeing how my mom cared, not just about the food, but the feeling. The way she designed the table, choose the colors, create a sense of occasion even when there was none. And when I wasn't in the kitchen or imagining myself playing hostess, I was rearranging my room. Yep, you heard that right. It seemed like I did this every month, believe it or not. But I just knew somehow that changing the space changed how I felt, and I loved that feeling. Can I just pause here and just say one thing? Without a doubt, I am my mother's child. My mother painted the walls, rearranged the entire house, and you can ask anyone I grew up with at least every 6 months. Just because she believed in the beauty for the sake of it. And without realizing it, she taught me that food, design, entertaining, and even storytelling, I'm discovering now, they weren't separate things for her, and they weren't separate things for me. They were my languages. But then, life stepped in. And as the firstborn daughter in an immigrant household, there are 3 main things that were already written in the script long before I understood it. Number 1, I had to be the example. Hey there, perfectionism. Number 2, I had to make it count. What's up, overachiever? Number 3, I had to make my parents proud. This is something, of course, I'm still hoping I'm doing, and I certainly know I held my end of the deal while they were here. But I also understand that what they would be proud of would have been subjective to what they valued. But I did do it. I became an overachiever, the practically straight-A student, the safe bet, the good child. And my family's stability wasn't optional. It was survival. So when it came time to choose a career, saying something like, I don't know, Mom, Dad, I want to be a chef, wasn't realistically an option, not for a girl like me. Although we all know that this can be a very prestigious, reputable, and lucrative career. I mean, it's part of what I do now for a living. But for my parents, they saw kitchens as places where people like them worked extremely hard and got paid very little, and not where their daughter should end up. So I did what I was taught to do. I conformed. I went to college, I majored in finance, I checked every box I was supposed to. And as I did that, I slowly stripped away every trace of that little girl who once rearranged her room just to feel inspired. And as you know, it wasn't until years later, after my dad passed, and quietly again after my mom passed as well, that I started reflecting on the life I had built, the one I knew deep down had never truly been mine to begin with. And little by little, I started peeling back the layers, letting curiosity lead again, exploring, not holding myself to a standard, but allowing myself to be pulled in any direction without judgment, without holding myself hostage if it didn't turn out to be of interest, and learning to walk away without any guilt when it no longer did. And while I've made many, many strides, I can't say there aren't still moments when I almost slip into that old version of me. It's just that now I meet these crossroads consciously and choose myself before the world chooses for me. Even now, when someone asks, "What do I do?" and I reply with perhaps a longer sentence or a fuller explanation of who I am today than just saying CFO, for example, I can see it in their eyes, the search for that single tidy answer. So I just smile, because I know if I choose one word out of the many things I am and do, they'll only hear one part of me, for their comfort only, and in return, I've made myself easier to hold and smaller to see. I guess what I'm really trying to say is, I'm here to refuse to edit my sky into a single star just so it's easier for someone else to point at it. Rebellion doesn't always begin with action. Sometimes it begins with awareness. And awareness can be uncomfortable because it asks us to look at the ways we participate in the very systems we wish to escape. In this case, the system that rewards those who can be clearly defined and questions everyone else, the so-called all over the place people. I've been thinking about how much we've been taught to value specialization, expertise. I'll be the first to say seeing the word expert in someone's title used to perk my ears up until I realized that expertise can be confining if it leaves no room for curiosity. That the truest experts aren't the ones who claim to know it all, but the ones who are still willing to learn. Yet, somewhere along the way, we absorbed this idea that knowing a little bit about a lot makes you scattered, but knowing a lot about one thing makes you worthy. In a world that seems to celebrate creativity and multidimensional living, it still tends to reward what's easily understood, which might explain why even the most open-minded among us still crave it in the form of neat little boxes. And it's easy to point fingers at the system, but if we're reflecting deeply about ourselves, are we part of the problem too? Do we scroll through someone's profile, see a mix of passions, and instinctively think, what exactly do they do? Maybe it's not judgment. Maybe it's the comfort of control. But what happens when we're the ones being looked at, when the spotlight rotates, when we're asked to simplify, to pick a lane, to summarize ourselves in a single line? Are we any different? Or do we quietly abide by the same rules we question? I think that's where it gets most complicated, because we don't always shrink in response to pressure. Maybe sometimes we do it to ourselves. We pre-edit to be understood. We anticipate confusion. We pick the one label that feels most acceptable, most efficient to us, even when it's not the fullest truth. And sometimes we even minimize ourselves just to keep from losing someone else's attention span. Awareness doesn't liberate us overnight, but it sharpens our vision so much that we can never again pretend we don't see it. Knowing that once we see how deeply the pattern runs, the choice stops being about breaking the system and starts being about stepping outside its reach. It becomes about outgrowing every definition that was never built to hold your fullness. I want to pause here. If you're listening on the free feed, this is where today's episode ends. To continue the conversation on how to live as your fullest self in a world that keeps asking you to be smaller, join me inside the subscriber space. You'll find the link in the show notes. Please make sure to follow wherever you stream your podcast and share it with someone who might enjoy it too. I'd be so grateful. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll meet you back here next week.